This is an optional session to make sure we're all up to speed on what's involved in managing change. Essentially, in any initiative, there are two types of activities. The activities that tend to get a lot of attention are the project activities. We often form a project team, they have a deadline, they have a budget, and they will either use a traditional or an agile approach to deliver something tangible, something new. It might be that that new thing is based on something that already exists, so they've made amendments, but they have created something new. Or they're creating something completely from scratch that didn't exist before. But either way, the word new is important because it's new, it's different. And therefore, once it's been created, people have to start learning how to use it. They're confronted by a change. So the project activities create or trigger change. What we then have to look at is how do we help everybody affected, everybody that's impacted, to work through what looks like a curve on this diagram. It's called the transition curve. And what happens is that effectively we have to go from how we used to work to trying out the new ways of working, maybe making some mistakes as we go, having to put them right. We have to develop our understanding of how the new ways of working work. And we have to keep repeating our work until the new way of doing things becomes our habit and we forget how we used to do things in the old way of working. And the most important thing to recognize, it is only when an individual has been through that transition from the old to the new ways of working, does the organization start to reap the benefits of whatever improvement it put in place. So if we've changed a process and we've streamlined it, it's only when that person is operating the new streamlined process with fewer steps that take less time to do, which means they've got more time to do other things, does the organization start to get the benefits of that greater efficiency. Benefits don't come from just having the project activities themselves. It's the combination of both the project and the change activities that leads to the realization of benefits. Ideally, what we need to do, therefore, because the two are so entwined, is we need to make sure that we actually bring the two types of activity together. And that's exactly what we're doing on this course. When you see the roadmap sessions, you'll understand how we create a plan of wave after wave of change. And each of those waves or iterations of change bring together all of the project activities. And we use those to give us all of the ideas of what needs to change. So we use that to brainstorm what are all the things that we then need to do to help people transition through from the old to the new ways of working. So what are the different activities? Let's take an example. Let's say we're building a new app, a new mobile app that somebody can use to do something. So the project team are going to be doing all the development work. So they've got lots of activities about building the business logic, coding the app, building the database that sits behind it, looking at the user experience on the app and making sure the design's as good as it can be. So they'll deliver functionality that we can use from the app. Thing is, in order to be able to do that, there are both the external customer for whom the app has been built, plus, of course, our internal colleagues who are going to have to change their ways of working. So we need to think about new processes. So maybe we don't need to do things that we currently do because now the customer can do it for themselves on the app. Maybe, therefore, we're going to be changing people's jobs. That means we need to think about what does success look like? How do we measure and track our progress because we're doing different things? Maybe we need to go back and rewrite the standards and the policies that govern how we do our work because the work itself has changed. Alongside that, as well, that we always include in our change activities is we have to create new feelings. We have to create new behaviours, new values, new attitudes that people bring to their work because their work has changed. So that's the total package that we have to put in place to be able to realise benefits. And I'm sure you can think of lots and lots of initiatives where, to be honest, those items that are under the heading change activities on the left-hand side of this diagram maybe haven't been done quite as well as the things on the right-hand side. Maybe not as much attention has been paid. So why is there a transition curve and why is there this dip because this dip is quite important, because we actually have to help people through this dip in productivity. It's also a dip in confidence. It's a dip in the efficiency levels of the organization. Because what's happened is that up until the moment that we ask somebody to use something new and to start working in a new way, they have what we call unconscious competence. Competence means they know what they're doing, and it's unconscious. It's not in the forefront of their minds because they've done it so often. It's just a habit. They don't even have to think about it. Just imagine when you're using your own laptop, for example, or a tablet, you don't think about how to log into it or put the access code in. It's embedded somewhere in your mind. You don't even think about that because it's unconscious competence. The thing is, when something changes, maybe we're forced to change our logon to an application, we become conscious that we don't know that logon anymore. We have to keep thinking, oh, what was it? Or maybe even consult a piece of paper where we wrote it down. So we know that we don't know it. So we're very aware of that, and we don't know it, which means we're incompetent. Sounds a harsh word, doesn't it? But it means that we don't have that ability yet. Now, the thing is, we have to move from conscious incompetence. If we keep having a go and we try things out and we experiment, then we'll get to conscious competence. In other words, we'll know what we're doing, we'll know how to do it, but maybe we haven't practiced it so much yet that it's an automatic reaction. It's not something that we can do unthinkingly. We still have to think through the steps to achieve what we're trying to do. But if we carry on and keep practicing, it will eventually become the new habit or the new norm, and therefore we'll get back to a place of unconscious competence, but this time in the new way of working. And that dip in productivity, the dip in confidence, indicates that when we first start doing things, when we're changing our ways of working, well, if we do something for the first time, it generally doesn't go brilliantly first time because we've never done it before. So we make mistakes, and that affects our confidence. But also, if we've made mistakes, we have to take the time and effort to put them right. So that affects our productivity. So that's why the transition curve is always shaped the way it is, because this is how human beings stumble from knowing how they used to do something to learning to do something completely different. Ultimately, then, the objectives of managing change, and we need to be very clear about these as we're on a course about being a change agent, is that we have to lead people through a series of emotions, because that's what the transition curve represents. The initial emotions are probably anger or frustration or annoyance, because up until the moment that we introduced the change, everyone was feeling unconsciously competent, which is a great place to be. You're competent and you don't have to think it through. It's a habit, and we've destroyed that. So people are feeling really frustrated, and they'll say things like, I haven't got the time for this. I'm really busy with other things. What we have to do is we have to build lots of communication activities, participation activities. We have to get them involved. They might not be convinced that the change, the new way of working is the right way yet, but at least if we can get them to have an open mind to have a go and try things out, then they'll start to have an experience of it. They'll start to build their competence in it, and therefore we'll get to a point where they do accept it as the new way of working. It's become almost the new norm, and they forget how things used to be. So these are the feelings that we have to guide people through. Really what we're trying to do is lead them through the steps of becoming aware that things need to change, that things are different now, then to get them to participate, and finally then adopt the new ways of working as the new norm. So those are the steps that we need to guide people through. I hope you enjoyed that very swift introduction to the management of change.